The hearing will come to order. In today's subcommittee on Seapower hearing, we're going to have an important discussion about the state of our Navy's nuclear shipbuilding effort. With us today is Rear Admiral Todd Weeks for strategic submarines, Rear Admiral Casey Moton for aircraft carriers, Rear Admiral Jonathan Rucker for attack submarines, and Matt Sherman, who serves as the program manager for the Navy's new Maritime Industrial Base office, which seeks to coordinate and execute investments to strengthen naval shipbuilding and maintenance. First, I'll thank each of you for being here today. As many of you know, I was in the Navy where I served as an operations specialist where the radarmen really swabbed the decks a lot, cleaned the latrines. It's alarming to me when I see some of our ships and hear about the countless delays in production to replace them, especially when these ships and submarines are often a crucial tool in projecting power in our seas and around the world. Today, the Navy's nuclear shipbuilding efforts are riddled with delays, workforce shortages, and industrial base strength stretched too thin, and we're at great risk of losing ground and falling behind adversaries like Communist China. We can look no further than our Virginia-class submarines, which are critical to America's undersea dominance, or the Columbia-class ballistic missile submarine, which was intended to replace our aging Ohio-class submarines and is crucial to our nuclear triad. This is just the start of our challenges and it's clear cause for concern. I'm very optimistic that with a focused industrial base, President Trump's leadership, and the newly announced Office of Shipbuilding, we're going to get back on track and ensure our naval forces are prepared to project power and maintain peace through strength. But like any business organization in need of a turnaround, we're going to need a plan to ensure our shipyards step up, improve retention, invest in new technologies, and work with industry partners to speed up production because our national security depends on it. Today, this subcommittee is seeking clear answers on how our witnesses will deal with these challenges and deliver for the American people. I look forward to our discussion, and now I'd like to recognize Ranking Member Kane for his remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to the witnesses. I enjoyed our talk last week, and I'm looking forward to the hearing today. And I welcome you and thank you for your service to the nation. 2 weeks ago, we had a hearing in the subcommittee on the state of conventional shipbuilding. While today we'll focus on nuclear shipbuilding, submarine programs, and the aircraft carrier program, many of the same challenges apply that we discussed at the earlier hearing. We don't yet know what the FY26 budget request will be for these programs, but we do know that Secretary Hegseth has decided to try to protect Virginia-class submarines and executive surface ships from the 8% budget cut drill that he directed last month, at least in the initial phase. So while we wait for budget clarity, today we can discuss the state of the industrial base that supports our nuclear shipbuilding program and what the Navy is doing to support that industrial base. We also need to discuss the important question, the big question of how to get Virginia-class, Columbia-class, and Ford-class delivered on time. This is particularly important for our submarines given the construction schedule, operational demands, and the commitments that we've made pursuant to the AUKUS agreement. We have to be open to new approaches and admit that what we have been doing needs to change if we want better outcomes. I want to thank the chairman, and I look forward to our witnesses' testimony.
Thank you, Ranking Member Kane. Okay, why don't we just start? Mr. Sherman, you want to start first?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Chairman Scott, Ranking Member Kane, and distinguished members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. As we commemorate the 250th anniversary of the Navy, we reflect on our unmatched legacy of guaranteed freedom of the seas, a legacy enabled by our sailors, which is not possible without the American industrial base, its workforce, and their ability to leverage modern manufacturing methods to build and maintain the Navy the nation needs. Today, we must confront and overcome persistent challenges, including workforce shortages and supply chain disruptions that are causing delays in ship deliveries. In order to do this, we must embrace a number of vital opportunities, including adopting advanced manufacturing for our entire maritime ecosystem, expanding and strengthening the network of shipbuilding suppliers, leveraging the power of capital markets for national defense at this time, and removing statutory, regulatory, or policy-driven bureaucratic barriers that stand in the way of maximizing maritime capacity. The Maritime Industrial Base program is leading efforts to reinvigorate the industrial base in order to expand shipbuilding capacity. In this effort, our priorities are: 1, systematically expanding and reinforcing supply chain capacity to ensure timely delivery of critical components. 2, addressing workforce challenges through partnering with government and private organizations across key regions in an all-hands-on-deck effort that will attract, train, and retain American manufacturing and engineering workers. The nuclear and conventional shipbuilding and repair industrial base must hire approximately 250,000 skilled and well-compensated workers over the next decade. 3, bold and urgent adoption of advanced manufacturing in all aspects of the ship life cycle. This can be done by integrating additive manufacturing, robotics, automation, and artificial intelligence into how we build and maintain our Navy. To do all of this, the Navy is working closely with our industrial-based partners and has launched nearly 1,200 supplier development, workforce, and advanced manufacturing projects in 40 states, all of them focused on supporting businesses, improving throughput, and updating antiquated tooling and production processes. Foundational investments like these take time to mature. We are planting trees, not growing houseplants. Since 2018, we have expanded parts delivery for submarines by more than 250%, and this production must more than double again in order to deliver the nuclear Navy that the nation needs. We can get this done. In parallel, we have supported industry efforts to recruit, train, and retain over 2,600 new employees, 12,600 new employees in 2024, helping to address critical labor shortages in skilled trades and naval engineering fields. We're also seeing momentum in advanced manufacturing, where the adoption of cutting-edge technologies is driving innovation and improving productivity across the industrial base. The Navy's Additive Manufacturing Center of Excellence in Danville, Virginia, has already printed more than 270 parts, and this year will partner with the advanced manufacturing industry to mitigate over 1,000 days of delay in parts availability. These efforts are on track to revolutionize critical parts procurement with the ability to print thousands of parts quickly and with unprecedented quality. In conclusion, our shipbuilding industrial base stands at a pivotal moment. Thanks to strong congressional support and by investing in our workforce, infrastructure, and manufacturing technology, we can ensure that the United States Navy remains the world's premier maritime force, not just today, but for the next 250 years and beyond. Thank you for your dedicated support for our sailors, our crucial industrial base workforce, and their collective mission. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Admiral.
Chairman Scott, Ranking Member Kane, it is my honor to be here today to address the state of nuclear shipbuilding. As the Program Executive Officer for Strategic Submarines, I have cradle-to-grave responsibility for the sea-based leg of the American nuclear triad, the largest and most survivable leg. I provide proactive and focused acquisition, modernization, and lifecycle management for both the new Columbia-class strategic submarine and the existing Ohio-class strategic and guided missile submarines. The Columbia-class is the Navy's #1 acquisition priority and a critical once-in-a-generation recapitalization effort for this foundational leg of the nation's nuclear triad. The current Ohio-class SSB in force is reaching the end of its operational life and must be replaced to meet U.S. Strategic Command operational requirements. In General Cotton's recent statement to this committee, he noted that the United States, its allies and partners, are confronted with a deteriorating security environment. The Chinese Communist Party's investment in the expansion of its land, sea, and air-based nuclear delivery platforms, along with Russia maintaining the largest and most diverse nuclear arsenal in the world, only reinforces the assertion that no portfolio needs recapitalization more than the nuclear portfolio. Simply stated, building and sustaining a modernized U.S. naval force that can stand the test of time, adapt to the ever-changing maritime threat landscape is more important now than ever. It is a mission that we live each day. The delivery of the lead ship in the Columbia class, the future District of Columbia, is projected to be 12 to 18 months late to contract. While this delay is due to a variety of factors, it is unacceptable. I have directed the shipyards to execute a bold, paradigm-shifting approach to recover lead ship schedule. The program is also pursuing every opportunity to drive and improve velocity, ensuring Columbia is appropriately resourced in the shipyards, and prioritized in the industrial base. The second ship, the Future Wisconsin, is on schedule. We have seen positive continued performance and productivity improvements over the lead ship. Wisconsin is approximately 5% ahead of where the lead ship was at the same point in time during her construction. Early procurement and construction activities are underway for the next 5 ships, building on the learning demonstrated on Wisconsin. I would like to thank the committee for your steadfast support of nuclear shipbuilding. Together with my counterparts, I am committed to rebuilding our shipbuilding industrial base, building and sustaining the Navy the nation needs. I hold myself personally accountable for and remain committed to providing SSBNs on time and in budget with the ability to operate anywhere and everywhere, to deter aggression, respond in crises whenever and wherever they happened, and to keep our seas open and free. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. I look forward to your questions.
Admiral Rucker, there's a vote ongoing now, so you'll see some folks coming in and out. But Admiral Rucker, you're up next.
Thank you, sir. Ranking Member Kane and distinguished members of the subcommittee are coming and going. Thank you for your opportunity to be here before you today. Your continued support remains instrumental in helping the Navy and industry build and maintain our submarine force and uplift the industrial base to increase production and improve operational availability. As the Program Executive Officer for Attack Submarines, I am both privileged and honored to be responsible for sustainment of the Navy's attack submarines and for the design and acquisition of the most capable attack submarines in the world, the Virginia-class. Our Navy's unmatched undersea capability is a key component of the United States' ability to deliver peace through strength. The United States force structure requirement is 66 attack submarines. Virginia-class submarines are also a vital component of the AUKUS partnership, which is a generational opportunity to deepen diplomatic, security, and defense cooperation in the Indo-Pacific, including the sale of Virginia-class submarines to Australia. To meet U.S. fleet requirements, the Navy must first achieve a production cadence of 1 Columbia-class plus 2 Virginia-class submarines per year. This is what we call 1+2. To then meet AUKUS commitments, this will subsequently ramp to 1+2.33. To accomplish this, the U.S. submarine industrial base is undergoing its largest recapitalization effort in nearly 50 years. Over the last decade, we have more than doubled our annual submarine tonnage production, and we must double it again this decade. As of March 2025, the Navy has taken delivery of 24 Virginia-class attack submarines, with 14 additional submarines under construction. In 2024, the Navy and industry team delivered 2 Virginia-class submarines to the fleet, New Jersey and Iowa, and we are tracking to deliver 2 more submarines in 2025, Massachusetts and Idaho. However, our 2024 annual production rate of Virginia-class submarines per year was 1.13, compared to our need of 2.0. The main causes for this are workforce challenges, material and supplier delays, and shipbuilder facilities and infrastructure issues, all of which are driving cost increases and schedule delays. Together, the Navy and industry are aggressively addressing these challenges. In fiscal year 2018, Congress began appropriating funding to help lift the submarine industrial base to increase capability and capacity. This funding started to grow significantly in fiscal year 2023. We are executing a holistic strategy across the shipbuilders and industrial base. Increasing production takes time. Our dividends are not fully matured, but we are seeing initial benefits of the investments, and we expect much more to come. Submarine shipbuilding and sustainment is my life, and I am fully committed to improving things. Continued strong collaboration between Navy, industry, and Congress is crucial to executing these important efforts. I want to thank the subcommittee for your steadfast bipartisan support of the U.S. Navy and our industrial base, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Admiral Rucker. Admiral Moton, you're up.
Ranking Member Kane and all distinguished members of the subcommittee, good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to discuss our Navy's vital shipbuilding mission. I am honored to lead the team of sailors and Navy civilians of the Program Executive Office Aircraft Carriers. My team is proud to both deliver and sustain these mighty instruments of national power. We consider our mission a solemn obligation to our Navy and our nation. The results of our work are visible daily, from USS Harry S. Truman operating in the Middle East, with Carl Vinson en route to join her, to the George Washington maintaining steady presence in the Pacific. We see it in our oldest aircraft carrier, USS Nimitz, beginning her final deployment after 50 years of service, and our newest carrier, USS Gerald R. Ford, continuing to bring next-generation capability to the fight as she prepares for her upcoming second deployment. Our future Ford-class aircraft carriers are under construction at Newport News Shipbuilding, where we continue working closely with the shipbuilder to address challenges and improve performance. CVN 79, the future USS John F. Kennedy, is 95% complete, but delivery is pressurized by remaining critical path work. Supply chain issues have impacted CVN 80, the future USS Enterprise, with sequence critical material delaying the ship. We are rigorously incorporating all lessons learned into production. CVN 81, the future USS Doris Miller, is early in construction but has benefited from earlier material buys and an innovative dry dock modification that will allow simultaneous carrier construction. The Navy and industry are responsible and accountable to improve this performance. With my partners here at this table, we are attacking shipbuilding challenges with investment and improvements in our industrial workforce, supply chain resiliency, and shipbuilding infrastructure. Specific to carriers, we have transitioned new construction to digital products, implemented projects to expand and distribute production capacity, made focused improvements in critical system production techniques and worker training and efficiency, and accelerated the adoption of advanced manufacturing. Our guidepost remains our statutory force structure requirement of 11 aircraft carriers, the most survivable, lethal, and adaptable airfields in the world. As an enterprise, we will deliver JFK to the fleet on the fastest possible path to combat readiness. We will continue to stabilize and improve class shipbuilding production. In service, we will continue to improve overhaul and maintenance, and we stand ready to extend the service lives of these 50-year platforms as appropriate, as we have already done on Nimitz and Eisenhower. We will do all of this working collaboratively with industry, knowing that we are accountable to every citizen for providing the protection they deserve. I want to thank Congress and specifically this subcommittee for your steadfast support of our Navy, our sailors, our shipbuilding mission, and our industry that enables it. I look forward to your questions.
Great. We will jump in. I'll begin with a 5-minute round of questions. I know then the chairman should return promptly and I'll go vote. Let me ask a question general before I get into the particular platforms, which is the adjudication of resources and workforce to these 3 very important platforms. Columbia class, very important. Virginia class, very important. Carrier, very important. You cite some of the reasons for delays or not being able to do the work we need to do in a timely fashion, and the reasons you cite are similar: supply chain issues, workforce issues. As you work together with the 2 primary shipyards, how, from a Navy standpoint, how are you sort of prioritizing and adjudicating the progress on Virginia class vis-a-vis Columbia, vis-a-vis Carrier? If you could talk about that, please.
Sir, I'll just briefly open up by, obviously, all of the platforms are important. It has to be in all of the above strategy. Columbia is clearly our highest program priority, but the carriers bring an essential mission, and Virginia is critically important to the fight. We work together. We have to do what makes our programs most efficient, but we work together every day, ensuring that our plans for both shipyards support construction to meet our objectives for both. We work with Navy leadership to ensure that we do that. Trade-offs have to be made at some point, and there is a balanced process, but our going-in position is that we have to accomplish it all, and that's what our plan is designed to do.
And I completely agree, but your point about the Columbia being the primary acquisition priority, that is because it's the one place where we cannot have a gap. We cannot have a gap in the triad. And you have been able, I think, Admiral Weeks, you've been able to manage the gap a little bit through the extension of the useful life of the Ohio class. So that's helpful. But Columbia has to kind of take lead as we're trying to adjudicate, because this is an area where no gap is really allowable. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. So I 100% agree with everyone. We work very hard to make sure that the programs don't come into competition with each other, because the only people that lose, or the only thing that loses when we do that is the American people. But absolutely, Columbia is the Navy's #1 acquisition priority. And as you state, we are doing select service life extensions for our Ohio-class submarines to make sure that we have sufficient margin to make sure that we continuously meet the STRATCOM requirement for 10 operational SSBNs. Yes,
Great. Thank you, Admiral Rucker. Please give us an update on the status of the contract for the 2 FY24 Virginia-class option boats and the $5.7 million in emergency funding Congress provided in the CR for FY25.
Thank you for the question, sir. I would also echo the importance of all the programs. Where we stand right now is on the FY24 ships, which is 2 boats, as well as the $5.7 billion. We have finished up primary negotiations. We're finishing up documentation, as well as getting final approvals, answering questions for the various stakeholders to be able to support awarding the contract in the near term.
And when you say near term, give me some estimate of what near term means.
Yes, sir. Right now, as we finish up answering questions, making sure that the documentation is correct. Depending as we finish those, we're kind of in the final throes, so I don't want to give you a time because it's a little bit contract sensitive, but I would commit to you that it's not too far in the distance.
Great. Well, this committee and the full committee is going to be deeply involved between now and the end of June on the NDAA, so I hope that we can have a solid answer on that one as we get into the finalization of the committee's work product. Last year we had some significant discussion about the SAWS proposal that was made by industry with respect to this particular platform. Now, that's not in your control. That is probably SecDef and White House and Office of Management and Budget. But ever since the proposal came to light last year, I've had 2 basic questions. If we don't do SAWS, what do we do instead? And what can we do to make sure that we don't end up in a position where we need a proposal like SAWS in the future? Could you share your thoughts on those 2 questions?
Yeah, thanks for the question, sir. What I would say is the most important thing, whichever path we choose, whether it's to your term SAWS or a different path, the main thing we're focused on is outcomes. And what we were able to do through the analysis that we did over the last year or 2 is clearly identify across both shipbuilders and the Navy what investments would be required, what's required with wages. And so in the end, we're looking and really do appreciate all the congressional support for the money we need for the 24 ships and the anomaly funding, because that has investments and wages in there to get after what we need. So right now we're focused on working with senior leadership to achieve those outcomes, which is increase submarine production to deliver the submarines the nation needs.
And I'm assuming the second half of my question, what do we do to avoid getting in a position like this in the future if the outcome strategy has to be one that's sustainable and not just episodic?
Yes, sir, I would agree. The goal is the ramp to that 1+2 in the most efficient and a quick process that we can.
Great. Thank you. Mr. Chair, I yield to you.
All right, Senator Arnold.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, several reports highlight significant workforce shortages across the U.S. shipbuilding industrial base, particularly in skilled labor necessary for new ship construction. Without addressing this issue, we risk continued delays and increased costs in delivering much-needed vessels. So my question is, what specific action is the Navy taking to recruit, train, and retain a skilled workforce to support shipbuilding efforts? And by the way, and what is causing the labor shortage issues that I just referred to?
Thank you, ma'am. I'll actually hit the second question first because I think it frames out the overall answer. Over the last, if I go back 40 years to 1985 when we were producing ships at the rate, submarines specifically, and aircraft carriers at the rate that we need to now, we were about 30% manufacturing as a nation, our percentage of our workforce. Today we're about 12. So in a more service-based economy, it makes competition for those, for people, for resources, really challenging. What we are doing is really a three-pronged approach, right? It is actually, attracting workforce. We've established a buildsubmarines.com campaign that has resulted in 2.7 million job applications with thousands and thousands of jobs on a website that we work with a nonprofit partner. And gotten attention kind of across the industrial base. That's an attraction example. In training, we've worked both with the shipbuilders, now working with the public shipyards as well, starting relatively recently with the formation of the MIB program, and working with supply chains across 6 of our most intense regions to support partnerships between community colleges and those supply chain partners to do that. And then finally, retention. We have additional work to do here, but our critical team that's building and maintaining our nuclear ships should be paid more than the service industry wage, and that over time that wage has that wage gap that we had for many years has gone away, and so we're interested in addressing that, but also very critically. We have to train supervisors. Another thing that causes retention issues is inexperienced or poorly trained supervisors, and we have the least experienced supervisors that we've had at any point in our history that we can mine data for, and so we have to address that issue as well.
I mean, clearly, without an adequate workforce, and you have retirements, you have people, all of that you have to be very focused. And are you focused on the areas that I talked about? It doesn't happen. The workforce doesn't happen because it's a good thing. You have to be very intentional about getting the people you need and to retain them. So I conclude that that's what you're doing?
Yeah, yes, ma'am.
So one of the other issues is that there are always massive cost overruns. And so the estimates that we get for how much a ship will cost usually is way off. Is there a way that you can better tell us what the costs are so that we're not facing massive overruns due to basically an inability to estimate what the cost will be over time? Have you thought about using an independent entity to estimate the cost that might be involved?
Yes, ma'am.
Who wants to respond to that?
I will do that, ma'am.
Go ahead.
In general, in shipbuilding, good cost estimates are key to informing the process. They're key to understanding the business case. I know that's recognized as a best case in shipbuilding. I know that GAO has recognized that and the business case itself as best practices for shipbuilding. So I completely agree. Our process is set up so that when we are getting ready to procure a new class or new ships, we actually have independent cost estimates. There's a team that we work closely with but does their own cost estimates. Depending on the buy, we often have other sources of cost. We talk to CBO and others. And so we do take several inputs, all designed to increase the fidelity of those estimates and improve our budgets. We then obviously have to perform. The other half of your question is cost efficiency, and clearly that's part of the national efforts that Mr. Sermon talks about, and that we're working at each of our shipbuilders to improve their cost performance.
I can't tell if my time is, I think it is, so I will submit other questions for the record, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
When you contract with the private sector, do you mandate that they contract, or do they voluntarily bid and not do what they said they're going to do?
So much.
They voluntarily, you don't have a mandate that they have to sign a contract with you, right?
Okay.
Sir, it depends in which area of shipbuilding. I know certainly in aircraft carriers and nuclear shipbuilding, our shipbuilders, we have our two primary builders. For aircraft carriers, Newport News Shipbuilding is our only supplier. It doesn't mean that we don't hold them accountable. It doesn't mean that we don't aggressively look at their bids, but we do have to partner with them and collaborate as we do that. And I do believe that we can do both.
Okay. All right. Senator Telva, are you ready to go, or do you want to? Okay. Senator Shaheen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for being here today. I'm sorry I missed your testimony, so if you've addressed the questions that I'm going to ask, please forgive me. I know we're here to have a conversation about building the Navy's nuclear fleet, but we also need to maintain those ships once they're built. And that maintenance and sustainment mission is one that I'm very focused on because the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard is within half in New Hampshire and half in Maine, so we claim it. So, Mr. Sermon, how is the Navy prioritizing those SIOP investments to ensure that we have the public shipyards that are going to be necessary to maintain the fleet?
Thank you for the question, ma'am. My organization actually works closely with the SIOP office on the intersection between those fundamental infrastructure investments in things like dry docks and buildings at our public shipyards and how my organization is pressing to use additional advanced manufacturing. And so how do we put together the new facilities, the additional people needed with advanced manufacturing? So we're working very closely with them on that. And, understand there's, particularly at Portsmouth, as I happen to know, a very mature SIOP program ongoing and tracking with them as the new dry docks come in, as the new buildings come in. How do we best leverage technology and the workforce efforts that we're doing across New England, frankly, from Electric Boat to BIW and with Portsmouth? How do we put all those things in battery together? Organizations really focused around putting all the things, the workforce, the manufacturing technology, and the infrastructure with these partners together for better results.
Well, thank you. And as I'm sure you know, since you sound like you've been up to Portsmouth, the work that's going on there is going to make them much more efficient in terms of the job that they're doing, which will integrate better with the shipbuilding that's happening at BIW and Electric Boat.
Yes, ma'am.
I want to follow up on Senator Hirono's question about workforce, and I appreciated the comments that folks made about the effort to hire, recruit, and retain skilled workers. It's been an ongoing challenge at the shipyard, I know, as people have retired, because one of the challenges is just our unemployment rate is so low, there are a lot of options for people. And the uncertainty right now around what's happening in the Department of Defense has created a lot of anxiety and concern that it's going to make the situation worse. So I know that the Department of Defense has indicated that our public shipyards should be exempt from policies like the deferred resignation program, the mass firings, but my understanding is also that the actual policy guidance has been very slow to arrive. So what can you say that will reassure folks that that policy guidance is actually going to come and they don't need to worry about their current jobs and look for something else, because we do value the job that they're performing? I guess that's for you, Mr. Sermon.
Thank you, ma'am. What I can say is that I am confident in the demand signal for submarines. I am confident in the demand signal for repairing submarines, and quite frankly, because you talked about BIW and that work too. As my organization reaches to support across shipbuilding and ship repair, very confident in our need for surface ships and that continued work ongoing. And honestly, that's what I would say is I'm confident in that demand signal for the Navy.
Well, I agree with that, but I guess it doesn't address the policy guidance question and the slowness with which the Secretary's office, I guess, has come down to reassure people that they're not going to be fired. I don't know if somebody else would like to address that.
Ma'am, I would just offer at the general, I think all of us would agree that we need a strong professional workforce in shipbuilding and ship sustainment, including at Portsmouth Naval Shipyard, and all of our naval shipyards. And I think you mentioned the exemptions that have been announced for the public shipyard workers. I think all of us also earnestly have to agree, though, that we need to perform as efficiently as we can.
I would just point out that in Portsmouth, they have been on time and on budget.
Yes, ma'am. And I would just close by saying that it's our job to do both, to have that professional workforce and to be efficient.
Well, I would hope that when possible, you would urge that the policy guidance reflect that intent.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman Scott, for this hearing. I hadn't been in this business long, but I've noticed the shortcomings of shipbuilding since I've been on this committee and Armed Services Committee. We build components for submarines, the Columbia class and the Virginia class at Austell and Mobile. Probably most of you know that. It's pretty new to us, but I've noticed the recruiting, as the Senator was alluding to, workforce. I know Austell has gone out and gone through fast food joints and everything else trying to find welders and people that can actually work and understand it. So it's an ongoing process. Admiral Weeks, how does this module production support your goal of increasing submarine construction rates?
Sir, thank you for that question. So as we look at the constrained capacity in our primary build yards, it's really important that we recognize that broadening that shipbuilding industrial base, or the shipbuilding base beyond those 2 yards, is really the opportunity we need to be able to, again, bring more folks to bear, bring different geographical regions to bear, and alleviate the strain on our primary yards. Right, and that will then allow them to do most efficiently what only they can do, which is things like outfitting, final assembly, and testing. So
have we seen an increase in production by doing this?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, it has been, anytime you put something new in a new facility that's not done that kind of work before, you expect that it's going to take a little bit of time to come up to speed. And that's exactly what's happening. But we're now, especially with Austell, we've been on the path long enough now that we're starting to see the improvement that we expected. And both Admiral Rucker and I have been down to Austell multiple times, partnering with both Electric Boat and the company there to make sure that they're on track to get where they need to be, and they're doing well. Yes, sir.
Yeah. You think it'll help us catch up with the Chinese and their expansion of their submarines? They're flying past us. You think it's going to be possible for this type of procedure to really help catch the Chinese?
Yes, sir. I think it's absolutely critical that we expand our industrial base. That is the only way we're going to be able to compete. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Admiral Rucker. What can the Navy and Congress do to accelerate outsourcing of modular production?
Thank you for the question, sir. I agree with everything Admiral Weeks said and the importance of outsourcing. Where we stand today, we have a goal by 2026 to get up to about 7 million man-hours annually. That's equivalent of a surface ship destroyer from our submarine yards out to the industrial base. As of the end of 2024, we were at about 3 million hours, so we're about halfway there. As Admiral Weeks said, we've been down to Austell. They've already delivered the first 2 large submodules for Virginia class. They've got 3 more they're working right now. The next one's going to be delivering this summer, and then they keep on going. We need that strategic outsourcing to increase the overall capability and capacity for large structural fabrication, machining, electrical. So we're going to continue to work with the shipbuilders to ensure that we can execute that efficiently and effectively.
Admiral Moton, any thoughts on strategic outsourcing as a method to increase our shipyard output?
Yes, Senator, I completely agree with my colleagues on the importance. I think it's a critical part of our strategy to, as you say, to improve our pace of shipbuilding. I would note in the example of Austell, the aircraft elevators for CVN 80 and 81 are both being built there as well. So we've done that closer to Hampton Roads. Outsourcing has been an important part of Newport News shipbuilding strategy to improve on aircraft carrier production. They've gone to several suppliers to help with construction of modules, including a site just across the river in the Hampton and Roads area that's focused on adding real estate and the ability to do panels more quickly to support our carrier shipbuilding. So I agree, it's critical.
Now, visiting Austell, I noticed that, especially in submarines, nickel is a huge part of very important parts of submarine. And our supply chain there, any 3 of you, can you give an update on, do we have a better supply of nickel now? Is it getting worse? Because we don't have a lot of nickel in our country. Anybody want to answer it? Mr. Sermon?
Yes, sir. Thank you for the question. nickel, as you point out, sir, is among the fundamental metals and alloys that we're continuing to work with OSD, Office of Secretary of Defense, to take a very careful look at and address. As you pointed out, we do continue to have both price fluctuations, which are of course related to supply, but committed to addressing those, sir.
Thank you. Just one other question, if I could, Mr. Sherman. The Navy and Capstone Investments put $150 million each to buy land from Alabama Shipyard just recently, which is just next to Austell. Can you describe how this partnership came about and what's your plans for growing the industrial base using, this land? Do you know anything about this?
Yes, sir. I'm familiar, and thank you for the question. We talked about outsourcing, and we understand, as Admiral Rucker and Admiral Weeks pointed out, we're about 3 million hours into that outsourcing that we have to do annually. We have to get to 7. We need additional, as an enterprise, we need additional space, we need additional workforce, we need additional production. We've got a very promising work started at Austell. We've got work started at BAE in Jacksonville. We've got work started at Rhodes in Philadelphia as well that are really going to bring us into battery, but more land is needed, more waterfront land. That facility that is at Alabama Shipyard, actually 60 acres of that 355 acres there will remain as in battery, maintaining our military sea lift command. Much of the rest of that, our intention in an opportunity zone, public-private partnership is to work to bring that land into battery, much like it was, that exact same land was in battery, building Liberty ships and tankers during World War II, is to bring that in battery for supply chain activities, for submarine modules, and most importantly, from my perspective, advanced manufacturing that will fundamentally teach us across the entire industrial base, the entire nation, how to build ships, unmanned vehicles, and other kinds of naval activities better and more efficiently.
Yeah, I'd love to get into the cell drone discussion, but thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. So first off, thanks to each of you for your answers. Mr. Sherman, so you run the Maritime Industrial Base Program. Since 2018, you've received funding above, or not you, but the program, received funding above normal funding. So how much is it, and what's the return that we can tell our taxpayers?
Yes, sir. Thank you for the question. Since 2018, we've received about $6.7 billion that's focused on the 1+2 mission, and then I believe around $3.16 billion that's focused on submarine sustainment mission. Those have been focused in a handful of areas. As I mentioned, as we mentioned, supply chain uplift. What we've seen there, and that's where we started. 18 to 22 is focused on supply chain uplift. The statistics we have from the projects that took place were funded between 18 and 22, and together with that and the rising demand signal, we've actually increased the parts output from 16% of what is required in order to execute 1+2 to just over 40%. We have to continue to advance that, and the plan for the money that's in battery now that we haven't seen the results yet, because it takes between 24 and 48 months depending on the type of project to really bring those things into battery. But 1,200 projects across workforce, across supply chain, and across advanced manufacturing are in battery, working to get our production rates better, sir.
You know what I don't get is I never understand how, with government, private companies can bid, not do their contract, and then somehow government's responsible for somehow putting up more money to get something done. It seems like if they bid for something, they know what employees cost. It's their responsibility to go get these employees, not government's responsibility. So it's never made sense to me. So let's talk about contracts. So every one of you have dealt with companies that have not performed on their contract. Do they have any negative? Did anything bad happen to them? Do they have penalties? What's the repercussions of not doing what they said? They're the ones who committed to it. You're not the one committed to it. I guess all of you have dealt with this, right?
Yes, sir.
So if you could just say, what's the accountability part of this?
Sir, I will just say when we choose a contract type, it is different for each type of ship that we're procuring and the circumstances, and so all of them come with various tools. Obviously, cost plus is a different strategy. Fixed price puts more accountability on the shipbuilder. We have fixed price with share lines, which strongly incentivize them to have positive cost performance. Every contract has often a typical a set of incentives that go along with that incentivize the shipbuilder to perform in schedule or other key program aspects. We hold the contractor accountable by first of all the profit that's associated with those, and sometimes with other measures, but it differs for each contract depending on what we're executing.
So, Admiral Rucker.
Yes, sir. Thanks for the question. I agree with my colleague, Admiral Moton. What I would also say is, in addition to holding them accountable via their profit and how much money they make or lose, we have had cases where vendors have not performed, one of our strategic outsourcing vendors, in which case we move the work from them to other vendors. So we do take action when we do see something that is affecting our production.
Are they responsible for any increased cost if you have to move it?
It goes back to what Admiral Weeks said, sir. It depends on the contract structure. So my answer is it depends. In some cases, they are fixed price contracts, which they are fully responsible. In other cases, it might be a cost contract, depending on if it's a development one or not. And so it depends on the amount of risk and how we share that risk.
Admiral Weeks.
Yes, sir. And I would add that in extreme cases, we can also withhold payments. So we do retain. We'll retain some of the payments if the companies are not performing to the contract. So that is another tool that's in our inventory if we needed to use it.
Chairman.
Yes, sir. As Admiral Rucker said, we've had 17 suppliers where we've stood up additional suppliers where we were single source previously with the submarine industrial base investments. To fully address your question, sir, I would say that the direction that we are headed with these maritime industrial base efforts, with partnering across the submarine and aircraft carrier community, particularly in submarines, is to get to leverage competitive forces to get the best results, and both in terms of schedule and cost out of our industrial base. And as we build up the maritime industrial base, we are positioning ourselves to better leverage those forces.
Thank you. Senator Sheehy.
Thanks for your time today, gentlemen. How do we boost our forward submarine tender capability? My understanding is we're pretty low on those right now.
Thanks for the question, sir. Right now we have two. Right now they're helping us, if you're probably familiar with the maintenance that was done over in Australia. We actually positioned our tender there to help the USS Hawaii when it was over there doing maintenance, USS Minnesota as well. Right now those two tenders are what we are using, but as part of the budget process, the evaluation's ongoing on what's going to take to replace them.
How many do you think we need to be fully operational capable for the whole fleet?
So the answer depends. It depends on where we end up with the fleet, sir, but I'd have to take that for the record. I'm not the expert on how many we need right now, so I'd have to take that for the record.
Do you have enough?
The two that we have today, they are fully utilized, sir.
Okay. And then, as we explore a near-peer environment, is the Virginia class and I know the Columbia class as well, is that where we need to be operational-wise, do you think, as far as capabilities for a near-peer engagement? Or do we think there's a next-gen investment we need to make for our undersea dominance?
Yes, sir. Thanks for the question. As the PEO for attack submarines, I own not only the Virginia-class construction and sustainment, but also the development of the next-generation SSNX. The Virginia is an extremely capable platform. There's no peer like it in the world, so it is executing missions today for national security. However, as we look out in the future and where the rest of the world is going, we are realizing what we need to add in terms of payload, speed, stealth, and survivability. And so that's what we're looking for, the next-generation attack submarine. But our intent is to continue for the 25 shipbuilding plan, continuing to build Virginia-class in parallel as well.
And our replacement capability for that, which ties back to our maritime industrial base, if we enter into a sustained conflict, our ability to replace vessels, should they be attrited, do you feel confident we have the ability to have replacement both undersea and for our surface vessels?
Great question, sir. For our submarines, our 4 public shipyards are what have the primary capacity to repair our submarines, as well as our 2 private shipbuilders. We've been undergoing material strategy to ensure that we can uplift and provide, working with Matt Sermon's team and the rest of the industrial base, to provide the necessary spare parts that we have on the shelf so that as we need to do those repairs, they're more available. We've obviously, as we went down to low-rate production, had less on the shelf, so now we're in the process of not only improving submarine construction, but our sustainment efforts as well.
So I would just briefly add as well on the sustainment side, that the ability of our naval shipyards and our private shipyards to do a quick repair is a big focus. I know for Naval Sea Systems Command and other organizations, basically the ability to respond to battle damage is something that we have significantly increased focus on in recent years. It's a key part of how we would respond to any conflict.
Yeah, and I think my concern is, we've become very comfortable, in the not near peer environment where, we may have damage, but my biggest concern is when it's a near peer conflict and we're losing ships, i.e. they're destroyed and sunk, and our ability to replace those at a rate higher than the adversary. Right now, our adversary builds vessels 230 times faster than we do. So the advantage we had last time we had a big naval war in Westpac was our ability to replace those vessels rapidly. Now that advantage lies with our adversary. So 2 things either have to happen, one or both. We have to be eminently survivable under any combat conditions, or we have to be able to replace. And right now, we can't replace. So
Yes, sir. And we do need to do both.
Yep. And then one final question. I think as we see relatively low intensity conflict, with our naval combat in the Red Sea, what have you learned as far as I don't think we've had any major vessel damage from that, but of course we've had magazine replacement, and we've had to keep those ships combat operational. Are there many lessons that you've gleaned from the fleet now that we've actually seen for the first time in decades some pretty steady naval combat that we can adopt quickly?
So I will just say, obviously, that's not day-to-day, as the aircraft shipbuilder, but as a naval officer, I've been extremely proud to watch what's happened in the Red Sea. Our fleet has responded magnificently. Getting our assets on station, supporting them in theater has been significant. I know that Admiral Cooper and others have talked explicitly about the incredible performance of the crews of our carrier strike groups. We are learning on the fly. We are outpacing anyone's ability to keep up with us as we adapt to the tactics and techniques that have been used and made improvements on the fly to ensure that our entire Navy force out there is able to respond. And obviously, so far, it's been successful. And so we have learned a lot, but we have a lot to be proud of as well.
Thank you.
Mr. Blumenthal.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for being here today. Thank you for your testimony and your service to our nation. I want to begin on submarines. I was at the commissioning of the Iowa on Saturday. As always, with all the commissionings and christenings, a stirring and moving event. And a tribute to the great workforce at EB. I was talking to Mark Rea. I'm sure you're familiar with him, and he seemed pretty optimistic about the progress on hiring enough of the skilled workforce that are necessary in the thousands. Is that your assessment as well, Rear Admiral Rucker?
Thanks for the question, sir, and good to see you again. Good seeing you at the Iowa on Saturday. I will applaud you for being able to make it up there, given your schedule, I know. Yes, sir, I would agree. From 2022 to 2023, we saw across both shipbuilders about a 41% increase in their hiring. And in 2024, they pretty much met their goals. Our challenge now is to continue to work with them on their attrition. Those rates have come down since 2022. However, they're still higher than they need to be, especially in the 1 to 2 year workforce range. And so that's an effort that we are working together with them to address.
Is there anything you would recommend our doing in the NDAA to make possible or make more likely that workforce, meeting that workforce challenge?
Yes, sir. There are multiple things that we're doing, so I appreciate the question. I would say the workforce is one of the number one things that is needed to be able to build the submarines and aircraft carriers. Wages is one of the top things, and so appreciate Congress's continued support and the funding that came in, the emergency supplemental, the $5.7 billion of that. About $520 million of that is specifically to go after wages on current contracts across all three of our programs, and that's something as we move forward, we can hopefully be able to continue to do that so we can pay the people that do the work what they should earn and deserve to earn.
They're in the midst, or they're beginning contract negotiations with a number of their unions, I believe, and I think that's very important to meet the goals and challenges of their workers in an era of rising prices and possibly even higher prices in the future. Let me ask you, if I may, on the subject of cost. Both the Columbia-class and the Virginia-class programs depend on nuclear-grade skill, high-yield steel alloys, other kinds of extremely specialized materials coming from a supply base that has shrunk over the last few years. I think in the 1980s there were 17,000 suppliers. Today there are around 5,000. Will tariffs impact the costs of producing our nuclear submarines?
Senator, thank you for that question. As I'm sure you're aware, the vast majority of the components that go, certainly into the Columbia class, but also the Virginia class, are American-made components. The Navy anticipates that there may be some cost increases associated with tariffs. However, it's really too early to be able to assess what those might be.
I'm sorry, maybe it's going to be up to the suppliers to determine what the...
No, sir. I mean, the Navy, as we have worked together with industry to evaluate what the, as costs change and go up or go down, depending on what market you're talking about. Again, it's all sort of rides, all the things we procure for the, certainly in the commodity space, like steel and things like that, really do ride on kind of what the market is, right? And so as the things sort of ebb and flow, our ability to work together with industry to be able to evaluate what the impact would be to our program specifically.
So we really don't know at this point?
We do not know, yes, sir.
Let me ask you, what is the timetable for the Columbia currently being constructed and the next two, if you can tell us?
Yes, sir. So lead ship District of Columbia, right now we are projecting it to be 12 to 18 months late to contract. However, we're taking action right now to accelerate and recover as much schedule as we possibly can. The second ship, Wisconsin, is currently on schedule. So we're on schedule to deliver that ship at the 80-month contract. The next 5 ships, we're really in the early construction phase of those, so we have not yet, we're not in a position yet to be able to evaluate where they are relative to the delivery schedule. However, all the activities that we have going on right now are all on track.
So just to be more precise, the Columbia will be ready in about 2027?
Sir, it'll be closer to 2029.
2029?
Yes, sir.
And the next, the Wisconsin, what year?
So Wisconsin will deliver in 2032, but I will.
2032?
Yes, sir.
And the one after that, the Groton?
So that, sir, would be in 2034.
2034.
Sure.
Let me, I recognize I'm out of time, Mr. Chairman. Maybe if we have a second round and I can stay, I'll come back with more questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And gentlemen, thank you for your testimony. By the way, as a senator, I've gotten to kind of dig deep into the whole history of the nuclear Navy, and then it's really a remarkable organization. And, you guys are all part of something in my view that's very special. It started out under some really unique leadership with Admiral Rucker, and then the systems in which we continue today have a long-term billet assignment for the Admiral in charge of the nuclear Navy, an 8-year assignment. So one of the things I tried to do last year, and I raised this in the hearing 2 weeks ago on conventional surface shipbuilding, is saying, hey, why wouldn't we want to do something similar on shipbuilding? I asked Vice Admiral Downey on NAVC, from NAVC, should we make the NAVC billet like the head of Navy nuclear reactors, 8 years, and that way he can actually oversee shipbuilding. It was interesting, I didn't know this, but Admiral Downey said, well, NAVC is a 3-year billet, but it often gets extended, which actually kind of makes my point. So last year, I had a provision that this committee passed and voted on, pretty strongly bipartisan vote, that got in the Senate's NDAA bill for having NAVC to have an 8-year billet, just like the head of Navy nuclear reactors. So that individual, and then be done, retired, can actually seriously oversee shipbuilding, not have to look at your next billet assignment. What do you gentlemen think about that? I think Admiral Downey kind of liked the idea. I like the idea. I think we're going to reattack it again. Big Navy stripped it out last year in the conference with the House. I have no idea what the hell the House was doing, but the Navy didn't like it for some reason. Why? Why wouldn't we want to do that? It works for you guys. Why wouldn't it work for shipbuilding writ large? Anyone have a view on that?
So I'll just start. I probably have a little bit of a unique perspective on my panel here in PO carriers. I'm actually not a nuclear trained officer. I have immensely enjoyed working with naval reactors over the last 2 years in the job and have been incredibly impressed with it.
Do you think part of their impressiveness is the fact that the head of Navy nuclear reactors has an 8-year billet and
I do, sir.
Retires
I'm certain that steady, capable leadership is part of their success. Absolutely.
Would that help in shipbuilding?
Longevity, the ability to see programs through a long period of time, I think is always helpful. People often bring up other factors such as being change agents and bringing fresh sets of eyes. From my perspective,
but if your fresh set of eyes are leaving every 3 years, you're.
Yes, sir. It has to be looked at from for every job. From a PEO's perspective, I certainly trust Navy leadership to balance that properly.
Yeah.
And
not always.
That's what they'll do.
Sometimes we know what we're talking about here.
Yes,
sometimes
sir.
We don't. But sometimes we do. Let me move on to another question. I just literally walked out of a meeting with Admiral Caudle, and we were talking about this same issue. He mentioned to me from 1960 to 64, the United States produced 41 boomer strategic submarines. 41 in 4 years. So we can do this. We all know we can do this. But we had a lot more shipyards back then. In the last 30 years, the number of public shipyards has been halved, leaving 4 and only 7 private new construction yards still in existence. Only 2 are what's more concerning is that we have only 2 private nuclear shipyards, and both of those are on the East Coast. The good news is there's very strong bipartisan support right now in the Senate and the House to help the Navy fix its shipbuilding crisis. And now you have the support of the President of the United States, who in his State of the Union has said he's making this a priority. Do we need more shipyards? Do we need West Coast shipyards? And if we did, I think this Congress would say, how many? We'll pay for them. What do you guys think? Open any and all.
I appreciate the question, sir. I think with our 2 nuclear shipbuilders today, we've been talking so far to the committee about all the work we're doing to move work outside of the 2 shipbuilders to what we call strategic outsourcing.
Mm-hmm.
The number we were talking about, it's about 7 million hours per year, so the equivalent of a surface ship, a destroyer that we're pushing out to the industrial base to other locations from a public
ship. Do we need more shipyards?
So the shipyards, we're actually evaluating that right now, sir. We have a joint study going on with the Secretary of Defense's office, the Cape, as well as the Navy that will be finishing up, and we're in evaluation right now of what will be required.
What do you think, Admiral?
I actually have the team that's running that study, and I'm waiting to see the final results, so I'll be able to get back to you later this year, sir.
Admiral Weeks.
So I agree with Admiral Rucker that we absolutely need more shipbuilding capacity in this nation. So whether that is discrete shipyards or as our current strategy is, which is to shift work out across the nation, right? Not necessarily be constrained by coastal areas. I think, again, from my perspective, the right answer is we've got to grow our capacity. And I think that comes in lots of different ways. And I'm looking forward to seeing the results of the study that Admiral Rucker referred to make sure we're being smart about how we pursue it.
Ms. Sherman, Admiral Moton, any of you guys have a view on this?
Sir, I think it's critically important that we get the shipyards that are both public in the maintenance world and, as you mentioned, our 2 nuclear yards to full capacity at 3 shifts and humming there as we assess this, which is part of what the study that Admiral Rucker is participating in is doing. And so the workforce efforts that we're undertaking to do that, to be able to really take advantage of 3 shifts at the public shipyards and take advantage of manning there, as well as how we use advanced manufacturing, have both got uplift possibilities.
Sir, I completely agree with my partners up here. Aircraft carriers are a little bit different. Obviously, the size of the platform, there's only 2 naval shipyards that are able to work on them and 1 shipyard that's able to build. But collectively, I think it's an important part of the discussion. We're actually part of the study that Admiral Rucker mentions. I can assure you that it is data-based. It is, looking hard at the future capacity and the future workload, and it's going to inform the right decision, I'm sure.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, just one final question on aircraft carriers. We have 1 company in America that can build aircraft carriers, is that right?
That's correct, sir. Newport News Shipbuilding from HII is our carrier shipbuilder.
Thank you.
Senator King.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to follow up on this line of questioning. Everybody around here for the past 3 or 4 years has been talking about rebuilding the defense industrial base, expanding the defense industrial base. How do we do it? Is that a matter of more contracts for the big prime contractors? Is it bringing new people into the business? Is it encouraging smaller companies? I mean, this is one of these things everybody talks about, but I never hear much in the way of specifics about how to go about it. Mr. Sermon, what are your thoughts?
Thank you, Senator. My 3 primary focus areas that are absolutely aimed at capacity are getting the workforce that we need, and that's
going to be my next question.
That's not just at the shipbuilders, but in the supply chain across the nation, right? Not just on where the shipyards are on the coast.
Isn't one of the big issues supply chain? Second and third order suppliers?
Yes, sir. It absolutely is, and so. My second item is foundational investment in our supply chain. We have, in the submarine community in particular, about 70% of our critical suppliers are single or sole source, meaning we don't have a backup method. So getting a backup supplier, or getting that supplier to where they're very competitive, both in terms of schedule and cost, is crucially important.
But one of the problems, we've had testimony before the full committee that smaller companies have given up trying to contract with the Pentagon. It's so burdensome, slow, so much paperwork, and we're losing the opportunity to develop this capacity in anything but larger entities.
Yes, sir. I think it's absolutely necessary for us to lower some of those barriers to entry, to get more suppliers in. One of the ways we're pursuing that is through advanced manufacturing. We see that, as we know, to get to the full 100% capacity required for the 1+2 number that we use, that we're going to require many additional components across the industrial base. And when we look at capacity and look at workforce and look at what our foundational infrastructure is, we know we'll need advanced manufacturing for that.
What are the bottlenecks in the Columbia program? Is it suppliers? Is it electric boat? Where could we poke to improve the throughput?
Yes, sir. I'll address that as the PEO for Columbia. So it is all the things that Matt Sermon said. It is absolutely supply chain challenges. I would offer that because of the unique authorities that we have with the Columbia program, so the advanced construction, advanced procurement authorities, we've been able to minimize some of those impacts, but we do still feel them. We also have the challenges in the shipyards themselves, right? The workforce, the green workforce we have in those shipyards, their ability to not be as efficient as they need to be. Those are also pacing us. And then unique to Columbia, at least on the first ship, is we have the first of class sort of learning that you always have with the first of class. So we're working through those as well.
Let's talk about workforce. You fellows have mentioned it 2 or 3 times. I believe we're headed into a time when workforce is a huge barrier now. I was with the building supply companies in Maine today. They have workforce problems. Everybody's facing workforce problems. And we always talk about wages. I think, Admiral, you mentioned wages. But I believe we're going to have to start talking about things like childcare and parking, because those are the things that are necessary in order to enable people to get to work. And I hope the Navy is, and I know they are in some cases, thinking about those kinds of, that's a legitimate part of the workforce proposition, is these kinds of ancillary benefits, if you will, to attract workers that we need.
Yes, sir. I would 100% agree with you. Congress did a great job in the FY23 NDAA about talking about workforce incentives and matching with the shipbuilders and our industry partners when we establish contracts. We've been putting those into some of the most recent shipbuilding contracts, and many of those are looking at things such as childcare, parking, quality of supporting the workforce to then allow them to be able to be most effective and efficient at their jobs.
And that has to be part of it. Mr. Chairman, I want to associate myself with Senator Sullivan's comments about tenure, tour. I think of myself, after 3 years, I barely was learning how this place worked. And to learn all you learn in 3 years and then move on, I think that's a discussion that should be had more generally. I'll never forget interviewing General Dunford when he left Afghanistan, and all the knowledge that he had that was walking out the door. So I think that's something that we ought to be talking about generally, not only in nuclear shipbuilding or shipbuilding generally, but across the board, particularly at these high expertise positions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield.
Thank you, Senator King.
I don't want to ask about the content of these communications, but I just want to ask sort of the fact of communications. Have any of you been consulted about how the proposed shipbuilding office at the White House should be composed and what mission that they should take?
Sir, I'll say that all of us had the opportunity to actually review the draft executive order for the White House Office of Shipbuilding and the other measures that are in there, and we were able to provide feedback, so it was very positive that we had the ability to do that and continue to have feedback. I know at kind of the higher secretariat level, there's active discussion going on that process and how that's going to work. We're supporting that process from our level as PEOs.
Great. Yeah, I don't want to ask about the content of communications because that's really for the executive, but the fact that you've been consulted, that's a positive and been offered the opportunity for feedback. Admiral Rucker, talk a little bit about the collaboration going on with the Australian shipbuilding industry around the Virginia-class program.
Yes, sir. As you mentioned earlier, the importance, and I kind of talked about the importance of the AUKUS partnership, both of our allied partners. To be successful in the Indo-Pacific, AUKUS is a key tenet of that. I've been fortunate. We have our AUKUS Integration and Acquisition Office currently led by Ms. Atkins, but just in the last 2 weeks, I got to sit down with the entire UK leadership at the 1 to 2, 3-star level to have an update with them on what we're doing with our capabilities jointly. And then as part of AUKUS, both the Australian Submarine Agency and the Australian Submarine Corporation was just over 2 weeks ago meeting with them. So far, we're seeing great efforts that they are leaning forward with the workers that are at Pearl Harbor Shipyard, about 154 of them. And in part of our discussions, one of the lessons learned that we learned about is that's a lot of trades. And so we're talking about what we need to do to also uplift their engineering and planning personnel as well. So that's kind of a takeaway we learned is something we need to get after as well.
Thank you. Admiral Moton, I want to give you a chance to brag on the Ford a little bit. You know, this committee has been very focused over the years on the delays and cost issues with the Ford class, with the arresting gear, with the weapons elevator, with the launch system. And those systems continue to pose challenges in future ships. However, the Ford is now under deployment. Talk to us about how the Ford is performing, and particularly in those 3 areas that had been trouble spots. Give us a report.
Yes, sir. Senator, thank you for the opportunity to do that. So our entire organization at PEO, I know Newport News, we're all very proud of the performance of Ford so far. Ford had a highly successful initial deployment. Ford was there. Ford was the initial response from the United States following the Hamas attack on Israel. One of the best pictures that I have is actually the Eisenhower and Ford sailing together. The ship did extremely well. The crew did well. I can tell you that during that deployment, the ship, including the crew, including the catapults, including the resting gear and the elevators, did over 10,000 aircraft sorties during that deployment. Weapons onto aircraft and conducting those sorties. The elevators themselves, lots of discussion there. Obviously, the elevators have done on Ford over 43,000 cycles.
And this is all the elevators, so you're not operating with like 7 of the 11. You got all of them going.
Yes, sir. I will tell you, as a program executive officer, my job is not only construction and sustainment. So there are absolutely early class sustainment issues, things like changing, where and how many spares and those kind of things. We are every day taking the lessons learned from Ford to improve that. But overall, the systems are doing well, and the ship is underway right now, preparing for her next deployment and doing exceptionally. So we're very proud.
My understanding is that CVN 79 is probably not going to deliver till March of 26. Is that correct?
So CVN 79 at JFK is 95% complete, so the progress is good there, but we are having critical path challenges. Right now, in principally 2 areas, in the aircraft, in the advanced weapons elevators, and also the advanced arresting gear. The shipbuilder is very focused. I will be quick to point out that the challenges that the shipbuilder is having are not design related. The elevators and the catapults and the aircraft launch recovery gear are performing exceptionally, as I just mentioned. This is the second class. We're still learning a lot of lessons on production. These are complex machines, and that's what we're seeing. We're executing a variety of improvements, both on 79 as much as we can, but particularly on 80 and 81. I do anticipate that that's going to delay the delivery of JFK. We are focused very much on mitigating that and getting to combat readiness as quickly as possible, and we're assessing that, and we'll have more details. But we are looking at all avenues to improve the timeline that I can get JFK to the fleet.
On 80, the contract delivery date was September 2029, but Secretary Del Toro's 45-day review suggested it would be more like January 2032. Is that still how it's tracking?
I think that was January 30, sir, but I take your point. So CVN 80, as I mentioned earlier, has been delayed by sequence critical material, major items of material that are late to the ship and are causing delays to the critical path and forcing the shipbuilder to change our big build cycle. We are doing everything we can to get that equipment, intense oversight from both the Navy and Newport News Shipbuilding. I do actually anticipate that performance has continued to degrade from what we reported a year ago, and I'm estimating a year ago we reported up to 26 months late. I'm estimating now 28 months. We're doing everything we can with the shipbuilder to improve that prognosis.
I said January 2032, and you're right, I meant January 2030 because it's the Doris Miller where the contract delivery date.
Doris Miller, yes, sir. Yeah, you're correct. Doris Miller is on track for 81 for 32. So the other thing that is helping with Doris Miller's schedule is, number one, we bought the material for Doris Miller much earlier than we did for Enterprise. That in and of itself is preventing those critical path challenges to 81. The other thing we did very innovatively was with the shipbuilder do a modification to the dry dock that's going to actually allow Enterprise and Doris Miller to construct at the same time. That's going to mitigate the impacts to Doris Miller.
Great. Thank you. Yield back, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Sermon, I guess I don't know if it was you did this or somebody else, but you shifted from executing industrial base funding through shipyards to a new not-for-profit Blue Forge Alliance. Can you talk about how much money we've given to Blue Forge Alliance and if we've gotten a return?
Yes, sir, I can. So over the course of, since 2023, we have done approximately 200 supply chain projects, as well as numerous workforce efforts, as well as coordination of our advanced manufacturing college, bringing together colleges and our technical community efforts via a nonprofit company called Blue Forge Alliance. That company has about right around $2 billion that has flowed through it to the industrial base on the efforts I talked about, primarily on supply chain projects. Right, the company is a nonprofit. The company has a overhead rate and an execution rate that is actually less expensive for executing these projects than we had as we were executing them with the shipbuilders. But just as importantly, the projects that they are executing, it has, and I believe that the shipbuilders would share this perspective, takes pressure off of the shipbuilders supply chain team, who is buying this 5X, really 6X by components increase across the industrial base. We bring the Blue Forge Alliance team into Battery to go and execute the actual investment projects that raise capability and capacity. I'm by no means stuck on like, hey, we got to use Blue Forge Alliance for this either. My plan going forward is to maximize bringing in partners from across the defense industrial base, from other parts of the United States, from other industrial base places of excellence where we've seen these kind of uplifts and learning and having more partnerships to ultimately get us to 1+2, to get us to 1+2 1/3. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Admiral Weeks, when you talk about the different ballistic missile submarines, when they're going to be ready, is that actually ready to go to combat, or is that just delivered and there's still going to be a lot of work to do afterwards?
Yeah, so the dates I was quoting earlier were delivery dates out of the shipbuilder. There is another, approximately 18 months of time it takes from when the ship is delivered till it's ready for first patrol. Lead ship is a little bit longer, but we are partnering with the fleet to shrink that to as small of a period of time as we possibly can.
Is that still way later than what they thought?
Yes, sir. It's still, we're still looking at, it basically carries forward into that on patrol date, although we're looking to shrink some of that, as well as as I mentioned earlier, the work we're doing with the shipbuilders to try to accelerate delivery schedules to get the ship delivered as soon as possible. So that's the fastest right now. That's the thing we can do. We're also, again, working with the fleet to optimize that post-delivery to first patrol time frame to make sure we're cutting out all the extra stuff in there and make sure it's really just the things we have to do.
Okay. Moton, so how many shipyards can we build at nuclear aircraft carrier, and how many do we have?
Sir, given the size of the aircraft carrier and the specialized facilities, we only have one shipyard in the United States that's capable of building them, and that's Newport News Shipbuilding under HII.
Okay. And could they be built overseas? Are there shipyards overseas?
Not that immediately could build a carrier. I'd have to check and see if there were one that were big enough potentially. But obviously, with the nuclear power aspects of the carrier, the complex machinery, which is part of what makes forward capability so special, I would say it would probably be unlikely, in my opinion, that we could do that overseas. But I'm always willing to look at any alternative to improve performance.
And so if they don't perform, then what do? We don't have any options?
Sir, Newport News Shipbuilding is our partner in building aircraft carriers, but we also hold them accountable under the contract. All of the provisions that are in there are designed to incentivize their performance. If they don't do that properly, they don't get those incentives. We do that, and we hold them accountable in many other ways day to day on their performance, right? But at the end of the day, we do have to partner with them. I do believe that we can do both, and both RPEO, Navy organizations such as the Supervisor Shipbuilding exercise accountability of the builder at all possible levels at the same time as we work with them to produce the ships.
Wouldn't it be beneficial to have competition?
So it's always beneficial to have competition. Prior in my career as a captain, I was the destroyer program manager for the Arleigh Burke class. I very much enjoyed having two shipbuilders that were in competition with each other as we built that class. It has to be a class-by-class basis, and obviously the carrier brings special constraints.
Okay. So, Admiral Rucker, we're continuing to be way behind on the Virginia class program. Is it really anything that's happening now? Because Didn't they tell us before we were going to be on time, and it still hasn't happened? What's realistic? And the same question I asked Admiral Weeks. When you say you're going to deliver something, it doesn't mean it's ready to go to war, right? And there's significant delays after that.
Yes, sir. Thanks for the question. I'll kind of work my way from the second question here first. When we deliver Virginia class today, they are the highest quality platforms in the Navy, independently assessed by what's called our in-serve team. They have the highest quality score of any ship in the Navy. From the time we've delivered them, we've worked with the fleet based on the fleet's needs to actually deploy multiple submarines. So both New Jersey and Rickover both deployed before their post-shakedown availability, and Iowa's on track to do that this year as well. So my answer is, on that, we do support the fleet and let them use them and adjust our schedules when world events require that. Where we stand today on production, sir, we need to continue to improve. It's both an issue with the supply base and at the shipbuilders. We've got actions ongoing, both with congressional help to support the uplift of the supplier base. We've already seen some bottlenecks removed. We have more to go. And then at the shipbuilders, we need to get after their production capacity as well.
So we're producing a little over one a year, right? And what are we funding? Are we funding more than that?
We have funded two. The Congress has appropriated two and authorized two in the past. The 25 budget has one that's in there. The advantage of that one, which I've talked on the record before about, is right now the production system is what I would say is out of balance across manufacturing, kind of the steel production, outfitting, and final assembly and tests. We need to get that back rebalanced. We actually slowed down portions of the production system that were at a 2 per year rate to make sure the whole system could then be uplifted together. And so that one boat in 25 allows us to resynchronize and rebalance the production system. And then going forward, the 2 per year rate that we anticipate doing allows us to do a more efficient ramp up to get to the 2 per year that we need to achieve.
So does it make sense to keep funding at a rate way in excess of what we're producing?
Great question, sir. I understand that perspective. Part of the continuing to look going forward as we go into the 26 budget, obviously that's still being looked at, but the advantage of the 2 per year is if you look across the production system, we need all phases of it to get to that 2 per year. And so if we go back down to 1 per year, looking out in the future, the ability to ramp back up to 2 would cause us to have that same challenges of ramp, which we're going through now. We have a clear plan working with Matt Sermon's team in the industrial base and then with our shipbuilders on a path to get there. So going back down, we would still have to get back up again to support what we need for our force structure of 66 submarines and then also our AUKUS partners.
It just didn't seem to make much sense when we're funding 2, we're not getting 2. But if we don't keep funding 2, we'll never get to 2. It seems completely out of whack of what we're spending.
Understand, sir, which is why in 25 we put 1 forward to kind of allow the system to catch back up and ensure we get rebalanced.
Okay. All right. Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I have a couple. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. If I understand correctly, we funded 1 for 25, but we're funding 2 for the successive years when we hope to be back on 2 subs a year.
The current PB 25 shipbuilding plan has 2 per year in it right now. Yes, sir.
Let me ask you, Admiral Moton, and I apologize if I'm being repetitive or just plain dumb. How far behind was the Ford on schedule? In other words, how far behind its scheduled completion date was it?
Sir, actually, I will have to take that for the record. I do not, having been the PO only
3 years.
I do not know the original schedule date for Ford, right? It was certainly behind. It delivered in 2017, but then also it delivered in an incomplete state and required the Navy several years through our Make Ford Ready program to get it ready, right? We have to do better than that. And understanding the challenges that we're still having, we have to continue to improve. It was unacceptable. I don't have the original delay number. I'd have to get that for you, sir.
Is the JFK behind schedule?
Sir, the JFK is largely complete except for critical path work, primarily in the weapons elevators.
Well, I know I heard you say that, but when was it supposed to be delivered?
Sir, its current contract date is this summer. It's supposed to deliver this summer. There have been some changes in JFK's schedule over time. The Navy shifted the plan on how we were going to take delivery of the ship. We also made a decision to pull a lot of the work that we had done on Ford after delivery into earlier on JFK. All of that being said, that caused a date shift. The current date that the shipbuilder is accountable for is this summer, and that's the date with the challenge.
This summer, but that's later than what was the date, the projected date? When was it supposed to be done?
It's later than the original contract date, but the Navy made a decision to pull capability into the ship so that its combat readiness, like when it was ready to go with the fleet, would be on time. That was what was done with JFK. I know that is slightly confusing, but it was done to ensure that we had a fully combat-ready carrier on the schedule to meet fleet needs.
Okay, I have to confess, I don't understand that answer.
Yes, sir.
If I'm a home buyer, I go to a contractor, he says, I'll have the home ready for you to move in
Yes,
Christmas of 2025. And if it's ready 2 years later, I can say it's 2 years behind.
Yes, sir. In this case, in your analogy, we would have the original schedule for the home. The home buyer may want to put a pool, and we decided that we're going to go ahead and put the pool in before we take custody of the home.
I understand that point, that maybe its capabilities were increased. But
yes, sir.
My question is, the original JFK, when was it supposed to be ready?
I do not have the original delivery date in front of me, sir.
Okay, what is, can you get these answers for us?
Absolutely.
And the reason I'm asking is, you've got two more.
Yes, sir.
The Enterprise and the Doris Miller.
Yes, sir.
They're supposed to be ready in 2030 and 2032.
Correct.
Are they going to be ready in 2030 and 2032?
Well, actually, Enterprise was supposed to be ready in 2028, sir.
2028.
And we are now projecting it's going to deliver in 2030 based on the
That's 2 years behind.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And the Doris Miller, 2032, was that supposed to be ready in 2030?
2032 is the date for the Doris Miller. We assess that Doris Miller is still tracking to that, partly by the earlier material buys and the dry dock updates that I talked about earlier. And I'll just say, Senator, my apologies, as a lot of those dates were long before I was with the program. I will get you a crisp answer on the dates for both 78 and 79.
And again, I hate to ask questions that maybe I should know the answer to. The Ford cost how much?
Sir, that's another one that unfortunately I do not have the final Ford cost in front of me.
I would appreciate knowing what it cost.
Yes, sir.
And what it was projected to cost.
Yes, sir. I will get that for you.
What is the JFK going to cost?
JFK is projected to cost $12.9 billion.
12.9.
0.9.
In other words, $13 billion.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And the Enterprise?
13.5 billion, sir.
And how about the Doris Miller?
14 billion, sir.
14.
Yes, sir.
Is the JFK actually, that figure 13 billion, is that what it was projected to cost, or is that higher?
That is our current estimate. It is higher than the original cost. I will have to get you the original cost in anticipation of your question.
I would appreciate that as well.
There have been, that's the total cost of the carrier, not just the shipbuilders, but also all of the equipment. There has been growth on both. It's unacceptable, I will say, that all three of these ships were awarded pre-COVID, so that they were affected by COVID. Performance and also the continuing escalation that we're seeing. None of that's an excuse, it's just a fact. The bottom line is we should have been able to deliver on the original cost, and that's our commitment.
Okay.
Have you done an analysis of, if you could give us this, what was the starting date, what was the original cost, what's it now, right? And then what the reasons? And then the last one for me is, okay, so they didn't do it. The people that were responsible, I mean, do they suffer anything?
Yeah, that was actually, Mr. Chairman, thank you for anticipating my next question. Were there any penalties for the cost overruns or delays? And again, going to my analogy on the house, somebody said, I'm going to get the house ready for you in Christmas of 2025, and it turns out it costs twice as much and it's delayed by 2 years. I would say, hey guys, I'm not going to pay you what I promised to. You're going to have to pay, you're going to suffer some penalty. And to go to the chairman's question, I think that's one of the questions I had. Were there any penalties? And will there be penalties for the cost overruns on the JFK, the Doris Miller, and the Enterprise?
Yes, sir. So first, Senator, I will absolutely get you the question that you asked for. In terms of penalties, the way that the contracts are set up, Ford was a little bit of a different, as the lead ship, Ford was a cost plus contract. That's kind of a separate discussion. For 79, for 80, for 81, those ships are fixed price contracts with what we call an incentive share line, and where basically the shipbuilder's profit is degraded as their cost of building the ship goes up. So they are absolutely paying a cost penalty for the shipbuilder cost growth on those ships.
How much does their return or their profit go down? Do they absorb all of the cost overrun, or?
So the way that to immediately absorb all of it would be what we call firm fixed price. For shipbuilding, what we often do, including on Ford class, is what we call a fixed price incentive fee. There's a target that they are supposed to hit with a target profit associated with that. And then we share either the overruns or underruns. So if there's an overrun, for every dollar in the overrun, the shipbuilder has to basically eat a certain amount of that out of their profit, and then the Navy pays. It's part of how we balance risk with the shipbuilders. It changes from contract to contract, but the contract is basically the same.
So the chairman is a business person, so he can ask this question a lot better than I. But my question is, what is the percentage of profit on these ships?
It differs from ship to ship, sir. Again, depending on kind of where you are in the class, it's a different construct, right? I could certainly give you an example. I think typically a typical ship percentage for profit may start out as perhaps 14% profit, right? And then that profit would degrade as cost performance degrades.
If the shipbuilder of an aircraft carrier hits the target costs, for example, on the JFK,
yes, sir,
which is not going to happen, it would have been 14%. Do you know what it will be now that there have been some increase in costs beyond what it was supposed to be, cost overrun?
Sir, I do know exactly where the Navy anticipates that the shipbuilder will end up in terms of cost and profit on that ship. That is a number that we typically do not say publicly in terms of reporting their returns. I would be completely willing to get specifics of those numbers to the committee outside of the hearing. But we do know precisely where we think their performance is and what the impact of that will be on their profitability on that contract.
I would appreciate, I don't know how I don't want to be presumptuous here, but I would appreciate.
You know what we should do is we can pull up, I'll get my office to do it, and I'll just send around to everybody. Let's get everybody's profitability of their public, most of them are publicly traded companies. We can just look at those numbers. And so you don't have to look at it it's not going to be perfect because they'll have all these different programs, as Senator Kane said, but that's one way to look at it.
Yes, sir. Sir, we can absolutely get you to the committee. We can get the specific information. Certainly, to your point, sir, there's public information. I know that Newport News Shipbuilding has publicly talked about, declining cost performance and declining margins, including on their carrier work. They've said that in their own statements. And we certainly assess that that's true. It's just that for the specific numbers, we would get that to you separately.
What I'll do is I'll get my team to just get get approval of them, There's a lot of public, there's, we can get it from all these analyst reports too. So I'll just get around to everybody. So all the ones that deal with, Seapower.
Great.
That might be helpful.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else?
Just two quick things. So one, this is a good kind of conversation back and forth about accountability and contracting mechanisms. So let me put one other contracting question into the mix, and I'm going to shift to something else. Block buys. So, I've been a block buy fan. You make a block buy, that should enable you to achieve cost savings by pre-ordering, supplies, et cetera, et cetera. But I wonder whether you have to factor in a downside to block buy, which is the block buys that were done, say, on Virginia class, were done at a time when we didn't know we were going to hit COVID and have big inflation. So you lock in a contract and you lock in a price, and then we had this significant inflation event that nobody was projecting. And so, I kind of wonder if you rolled it backward with the shipyard, or would we have wanted to do a block buy? If we had the crystal ball, we might have said, maybe it's not a good time to do a block buy. So now we hope we don't have COVID type emergencies that put all kinds of inflationary pressure on things. But the block buy has a lot of positives, but they may not be all positive. So for purposes of thinking about the best way to contract to deliver a result and to have an accurate assessment of the cost and the timing, I'm not asking for an answer, but it's made me rethink a little bit about whether block buy is 100% the virtuous solution. Do you want to say something on that, Dick? And then I'll move to an unrelated issue. Go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I'd be interested. I think that's a really important point. And I guess my question is, both of you, Admiral Rucker and Admiral Moton, have emphasized the importance of advanced buying of materials, which I think is critical. When you advance buy the materials, is it at a certain price so that even if, there are tariffs and inflation, and obviously steel and aluminum may be subject to tariffs. Steel and aluminum goes into these ships. But do you get the raw materials that you advance by at a fixed price, or does it rise with inflation?
Thanks for the question, Senator. The answer is it depends on the contract, but back to your question on block buys. We do block buys, we get an advantage of what's called economic order quantity funding in addition to the advanced procurement. By doing that, the shipbuilders, when we negotiate with them and they go do it, they lock in forward pricing rates so they actually can get a reasonable bulk buy, kind of like a Walmart. So that is a benefit. The downside to your point, Senator, is if there is some type of catastrophic change, just like they can benefit from it, and they did in early blocks, that unpredictable thing can result in a downside, and then we have to work with them on what makes the most sense on how we adjudicate it.
Please, go ahead, Admiral Moton.
I would just add another tool that we have for the scenario you're talking about is something we call economic price adjustment that we put in many of our contracts. Often contracts have an economic price adjustment for material. And we do that so that if there's general market increase in particular types of material, some of that we are able to adjust the cost of the contract to account for that. We quite frankly do that because we found if we don't do that, the shipbuilder's perception of risk is oftentimes going to cause them to increase their prices possibly even more dramatically. So we consider it a risk balancing tool.
The unrelated question I wanted to ask, Mr. Sermon, you mentioned in your opening testimony the additive manufacturing program in Danville, which is really designed to do two things. One, it's to train workers, that Danville cluster, to train the workforce, but also with additive manufacturing, it's also to come up with new strategies for dealing with supply chain issues. Is the Navy looking, I had heard that the Navy was thinking about doing another one in the upper Midwest, either Wisconsin or Michigan. Is that model something that the Navy is looking at dispersing more generally to try to help us deal both with workforce issues, but also to develop new technologies around innovative production through additive manufacturing of supply chain items and parts?
Thank you, sir. Specifically, we are looking to leverage on the training side, and as you said, the accelerated training and defense manufacturing efforts in Danville that will provide 1,000 workers to the industrial base across the whole nation in steady state, which they'll be in next year, and we'll do that going forward. Has gotten we have had it critiqued and reviewed by the supply chain folks who've gotten those workers and have had outstanding feedback on saving 300 days in terms of workers getting to full capability and capacity. We absolutely are looking to, and we have in a much smaller version as we were doing the Michigan Maritime Manufacturing Program that we stood up. We used some of the lessons learned to partner with the folks in Michigan. It's a smaller scale, but we will continue to look for opportunities to apply that. On the advanced manufacturing, particularly metallic additive side of that, what the effort in Danville has been primarily focused on is we have struggled, as I would frankly say, certainly as the Navy more broadly in the entire nation. I've studied our economy to get additive manufacturing demand into that industrial base, right? We have, because of cost concerns, because of schedule concerns, because of, is that material really better than how we were doing castings and forgings? We've struggled to establish the additive manufacturing community. What we're doing in Danville is focusing on a set of materials that are 6 materials that are really impactful to the submarine, aircraft carrier, and shipbuilding industrial base, and maturing those materials, and then working with the Navy and working with the shipbuilders and working with suppliers to then get a demand signal out to the additive manufacturing community for those materials, and with a formula that's like, here's exactly how you do it, so that as we bring additive manufacturing partners in, we would actually have an established demand signal for them, be able to put those kind of incentives towards building that capacity. But pressing that out further, I think, is absolutely important, sir.
Let me just say this for my 2 colleagues who are here. On this demand signal side, I have some tremendously innovative additive manufacturers in Virginia who say, I keep getting like awards from the DoD for being an innovator, but then getting no orders. Like I'm tired of getting the blue ribbon, but not getting any orders. And so I think you're right. Finding the area where you don't just have the innovators, but you're actually putting a demand signal in so that they can get work through their innovation. That's going to be helpful. But on the workforce side, this thing in Danville is fascinating. They usually have 50 to 100 going through a cohort at a time, and it's about an 8-week full-time, and they come from around the country and around the world. So the last time I was there, kids from rural Virginia, kids from the Pacific Northwest, Aussies, a lot of Afghans who are here, they already work to defend the nation, and they're here on a special immigrant visa, and they've decided, I don't want to drive an Uber. I've worked with the U.S. military. Why don't I be a shipbuilder? And you walk into this class, and you see them all learning together, and then they fan back out among the industrial base, all over the country, and some back to Australia to work. But they've had a common set of experiences to train, and so then you do find that it reduces the training needed once they get back, and it probably increases the retention too if they've been into this program. So it is really a program worth seeing, and it is bearing some fruit. But thank you for giving that report, and I yield back.
Anything else? Okay. Well, first off, thanks for coming. I can't imagine how frustrating it has to be for you to come and have to respond on how late things are, because none of you seem like you're the type that don't want to get things done on time and on budget and all these things. So thank you for all your hard work. We do have to we have to figure this out. We are falling behind Communist China. We don't really have a choice. We've got to figure this out, and we might have to figure it out pretty fast, depending on what they do. So hopefully I was talking to Senator Kane, hopefully with the secretaries that we're getting, hopefully with President Trump's leadership, this new Office of Shipbuilding, that we're going to be able to make a dramatic change to get something accomplished. Because my concern is we don't know when Communist China is going to take action, and if we're not ready, it's going to be horrible for our country, and we're going to put a lot of men and women at risk. So thank you. This adjourns the meeting, but we're taking, I guess we leave the record open for 2 or 3 days, 2 days, I guess, if anybody wants to add anything. Thanks.